November 2020?
Sure, there was the overwhelming stress ahead of the U.S. elections, gut-wrenching decisions about not seeing your family over the holidays in the midst of a worldwide pandemic.
Exactly. Suddenly, chess is sexy again. And I know what you're thinking. Since when isn't chess sexy?
Not what I'm thinking.
So we're going to take a closer look at Netflix's escapist limited series, The Queen's Gambit. Adapted by writer-director Scott Frank from Walter Tevis' 1983 novel of the same name, it tells the story of an orphan-turned-chess prodigy, Beth Harmon, and her meteoric rise in the world of competitive chess.
Also, it's set in the 1960s, so get ready for some Mad Men-style wardrobe envy because, with no restraint on spoilers, it's time to ask, what's the difference? Yes, as the year of our Lord 2020 trudged slowly towards completion, this beautifully shot adaptation became a bona fide sensation. In the month after its October 23rd debut, it was watched by 62 million households, making it Netflix's most watched scripted limited series to date.
During that window, it was also the streamer's top-watched series in 63 countries, including the UK, which are multiple countries. It also drove public interest in chess. In the 3 weeks after the show's premiere, sales of chess sets went up 87% in the US, chess book sales skyrocketed over 600%, and Google reported that searches related to chess had quadrupled in the United States.
But while the series got folks hot for chess, Walter Tevis' style is often compared to the simple, straightforward prose of Ernest Hemingway, and The Queen's Gambit is written in the same unadorned fashion. It begins, Beth learned of her mother's death from a woman with a clipboard.
On the show, Beth's entrance is a bit splashier, pun 100% intended. It's 1967 and an older Beth thrashes through the beautifully art-directed remnants of a debauched night in Paris. She chases a couple of pills with one of those tiny little bottles of booze set out on a chess set and makes her way to a very important chess match with a very stern man. But before we can fully appreciate what's happening, it's time for a flashback.
The Paris tournament as a framing device is a departure from the novel, which is told in good old-fashioned chronological order. Also unique to the show are the flashbacks used to explain Beth's traumatic early life.
In the book, Beth is an orphan whose mother had just died and whose father was, as speculated in the series by a supporting character, another victim of a carefree life.
The show portrays her biological parents quite differently. Through flashbacks, we learn that her mentally ill mother Alice spent much of Beth's early childhood off her meds on the run from Beth's seemingly caring father. A shot of a book young Beth saves from her mother's big fire informs us that Alice has a PhD in mathematics from Cornell University, which in real life would be quite an accomplishment for a woman in the 1950s, but in Hollywood, it's shorthand for mentally ill.
This was revealed in the midst of an impromptu bonfire of most of their possessions.
Fair point, but the show really does take Book Beth's already tragic early life, which incidentally was based loosely on Tevis' own childhood experiences of hospitalization, abandonment, and phenobarbital use, and just piles on in a way that seems beside the point.
In addition to living with an unstable mother, she is flatly rejected by her father, who in 5 years, and 0 wardrobe changes for little Beth, goes from tracking down his wayward ex, desperate to see his child, to, "Look, you had your chance. I see that you are totally unhinged, but please get back in the car with our kid and maybe we can talk at a more appropriate time." That's exactly how he said it.
This is just one example of how the series frequently takes small details from the novel and teases out larger, more dramatic stories. And Beth's brand new Southern Gothic backstory is one of the most obvious examples. The book's accidental death of her only living parent becomes an attempted murder-suicide that haunts Beth throughout the series. It's also worth noting that in the novel, Beth's biological family is from a poor part of town, while in the series, it's revealed that her parents are both from money.
You honestly believe our daughter belongs in a trailer in the middle of nowhere?
And sure, it's just a small tweak to her newly detailed backstory, but it's a thread that when tugged on begs the question, why?
Usually it's because it's important to a bigger change in the narrative on screen.
This one's really not.
And it doesn't really make her backstory more compelling.
Nope. And I don't want to assume her being from wealthy parents makes her transformation from institutionalized child to prodigy more believable.
Oh, no, that would be incredibly insulting.
Right, because that would make me want to throw around phrases like classist bullshit. But either way, when they decided to make her mother mentally ill in the series, it was Ivy League educated mentally ill. And we're just not sure why that mattered enough to merit changing it from page to screen.
Close your eyes.
Meanwhile, as the series jam-packs Beth's background with capital T tragedy, it actually softens her experiences at the orphanage. Sure, the staff are still doping the kids to keep them on an even keel, and it's a bit worrisome that no one notices Beth disappearing for hours to play chess in the basement with the gruff janitor, even though that may just be my own unfair assumptions about gruff janitors. But Mrs. Deardorff seems to at least genuinely care for these girls, in her own way. In the book, she's much more distant and has a very cruel streak. As adults, both Beth and her childhood friend Jolene express disdain and a lingering fear of the woman.
As a child, TV Beth seems to quickly find a friend in Jolene, while book Beth often feels more isolated and vulnerable. She and Jolene are friends, but their alliance is less solid. At one point, the older Jolene slips into book Beth's bed and pressures her into mutual masturbation. The episode leads to a conflict between the girls, with Jolene calling Beth a cracker and Beth retaliating with the N-word, adding to the reader's sense of anxiety about the lives of both girls. At one point, book Jolene alludes to a sexual relationship with Mr. Ferguson, and from then on, it's hard not to interpret his every kindness as potential grooming for abuse. And while neither the show or the book address race as much as you might think it would come up in civil rights era Kentucky, book Beth frequently thinks of Jolene and knows deep down that her adoptive parents, though keen for an older child, would never have taken her friend.
In the book, Beth is adopted just before her 13th birthday. In the series, her age is a little murkier.
Yes, that's right. I'm 13.
This is probably to make the casting of 23-year-old Anya Taylor-Joy a bit more believable. Later, Beth tells a Life magazine reporter that she's 14, and there's more than a small chance she's lying.
She is, after all, still a young woman in school.
If so, that's kind of a big deal in the world of chess, where the younger you are, the more impressive a prodigy.
The age question also affects how we view TV Beth's relationship with men.
How old are you? Never mind. Don't answer that.
In the book, her desire for Towns is unrequited, perhaps because she's 16 and he's an adult non-creep, but the show has them sharing a moment that's interrupted by a handsome man who seems to be sharing Towns' room and its lone king bed. The heavy implication being, there's another reason he's turning down a gorgeous 23-year-old actress that's not she's a child, because she doesn't appear to be one in the show.
Let's play chess.
Okay.
While book Beth seems to emerge from her awkward adolescence into a young woman who knows the power of a flattering haircut, TV Beth is undeniably beautiful and glamorous. In both versions, she has a killer instinct when it comes to chess. She's aggressive, furious, and most in control when sitting at a chessboard, besting her opponents. But in the series, she also leaves a trail of besotted opponents.
First up, there's Harry Beltic.
You're the reason I got my teeth fixed.
Yep, getting his teeth fixed for a girl he met once years ago when she was 14.
Pretending to be 14.
Either way, it's odd, but new choppers aside, TV Beltic is a much more complex character than his book counterpart. Beneath his frustration at Beth's superior skill, he is kind and introspective. He seems genuinely in awe of not only Beth's abilities, but of her. And through her, he makes peace with the fact that he isn't meant for a life playing chess. When he moves out of her house in the book, he simply drives away without even a wave. But in the series, he returns during her darkest days to try to express his concern and encourage her to get sober.
Beth's next opponent turned love interest is fellow prodigy Benny Watts.
There's a bone in the throat.
Benny is a young grandmaster who in the series is a surprising combination of two characters from the novel. He's like Book Benny in basically every way except for his personal style, which has been cribbed from a different, nameless book character that talks a big game, dresses like a pirate, and carries a knife.
I don't even know if I'm good enough.
You're the best there is.
While she's a chess genius, interactions with people often seem to perplex Beth. She's sort of forever watching other humans interact with barely concealed curiosity, but with Benny, she seems well matched in a romantic relationship for the first time. As she's leveling up her chess game, she's also leveling up her understanding of guys. Though, it should be mentioned that in the book, she describes their sex as all right and not as exciting as she had hoped, as opposed to this.
That's what it's supposed to feel like.
The last opponent turned heart eyes emoji is Towns, who has a much smaller role in the book. He's a handsome collegiate player Beth meets in her first tournament, who later photographs her in his hotel room in Las Vegas. He's a first crush who Beth thinks of often. He's described as resembling Rock Hudson, a passing detail that the series turns into him being gay. At the time of the book's publication, Rock Hudson's sexuality was not widely known, so it's very unlikely that Walter Tevis was conveying anything other than Towns being a stone-cold fox. In addition to his expanded backstory in the series, he also pops up in Russia, granting Book Beth's wish that someday he might just show up with his camera.
In both the book and the series, it's the tournament in Paris that's the catalyst for Beth's spiral to rock bottom. But in the novel, she goes to France, putters around the City of Lights a bit, gets a good night's rest, and suffers a devastating loss to Russian Grandmaster Borgov. In the series, the drama is punched up quite a bit. Beth is surprised in Paris by Benny's friend Cleo, a replacement for a girl Book Beth meets and admires in New York, but does not see again. The show's creation is a sort of French New Wave pixie dream girl with a backstory that's, by her own admission, equally far-fetched.
I became mesmerized by their passion. Well, that's how they tell it anyway.
Despite knowing that it's the night before the biggest match of her new friend's life, Cleo poutily pressures Beth into having one drink, and maybe hanging out with those guys. And next thing you know, Beth is passed out, fully clothed, and in a bathtub, having slept late for her match.
Now, I'm no Miss Marple.
Nor have you ever claimed to be.
But that seems like less of a wild night out and more like sabotage.
Ooh, did someone say espionage?
No, I said sabotage, but yours is more interesting.
Of course it is, because that's something the show really leans into. Beth's role as a pawn in the Cold War, which you may remember from Rocky IV. In 1972, American Grandmaster Bobby Fischer's victory at the World Chess Championships was celebrated as a win for the US against the Soviet Union. In both the book and the series, the US seemed to view Beth as a similarly symbolic champion of truth, justice, and the American way.
As we know, the spread of communism is also the spread of atheism.
But in the book, the Russians don't seem that threatened by Beth. According to one character, there hasn't been an American that could challenge them in 20 years. And the Russians, who in their country don't let women compete against men, basically act accordingly. The series ramps up the tension, making Beth a credible threat, and increasing our fear for her safety. And while Cleo is never outwardly revealed to be a Russian spy, I think we all know what she was up to.
Do we?
We do. I mean, I do.
Right. But another reason to have this character show up again is to give Beth a sounding board for her hopes and plans for the future. It also lets us see how out of control Beth's substance abuse issues and self-destructive behavior have become.
Plus, you could hint at a little will they, won't they?
What's that now?
Cleo leans pretty hard into the eyelash batting at the bar. And then there's the whole, ooh, who's in the bed moment in episode 1 as Beth leaves for her chess match, and then they reveal it to be Cleo, so...
You think
I think they wanted to leave the possibility open without ever following through with confirmation.
Well, if my options are queerbaiting or Russian spy, I guess I prefer spy.
It's certainly less problematic. In the aftermath of her defeat in Paris, Beth returns to Kentucky. Her deadbeat adoptive dad shows up to try and take the house he said she could keep, forcing her to dip into her savings to stay there. And before long, she's chugging wine and wondering if she's completely obliterated her brain. In the book, Rock Bottom is Beth drinking alone while reading her own press coverage, making herself so ill that she's afraid she needs medical intervention, and dropping out of a small chess tournament mid-game because she realizes she is about to lose to an inconsequential player. And while Book Beth looks puffy and feels so frail she worries about slipping in the shower and breaking her hip, TV Beth is more like...
Now is probably a good place to talk about the way addiction is handled in the book and the series. In both, Beth becomes addicted to tranquilizers as a child at Methuen, and later gets access to them through her unwitting adoptive mother, Alma.
Why do they only fill these bottles half full?
On the show, these substances seem to open Beth's mind to a whole new world. She takes them and then imagines a very cinematic chessboard. Visually stunning? Sure. A faithful interpretation of a text written by a person with the same addictions as the lead character? Not so much.
In the book, chess captures Beth's imagination and becomes a substitution for the pills that have, since arriving at Methuen, been the only way for her to sleep. On nights she plays in her mind before falling asleep, she's sober. This helps her save up the pills so that she can take multiples to get a stronger high on other nights. She also sometimes takes pills to take the edge off between playing a stressful game, but it's never implied that there is a link between Beth's addiction and her genius. In fact, during the periods when she's not taking pills or drinking, her mind is much clearer. Basically, the complete opposite of this.
Book Beth finally realizes she needs help to get sober and tracks down Jolene, who got her college degree on a phys ed scholarship but is working on a master in political science. And after seeing the state of her old friend's wine-soaked room, puts her on a 5-month regimen of morning workouts and balanced meals. When Beth learns that Mr. Scheibel, the man who taught her chess, has died, Jolene goes with her to the funeral, where Beth discovers the only kind of shrine you ever want, the I'm secretly proud of you shrine. Meanwhile, TV Beth just opens the door to find her old friend Jolene. No searching necessary. They immediately go to Scheibel's funeral and even revisit old traumas back at Methuen. And they get reacquainted on the squash court. Again, not huge changes, but they do shift away from Book Beth's agency as a person taking control over her addictions.
Some of these seemingly minor changes also edge TV Jolene awfully close to the trope of a black friend who exists to help the white protagonist.
I'm not here to save you.
That's slightly undermined by the fact that she's swooped in out of nowhere to sober Beth up, reconnect her to the past, and give her the $3,000 she needs to go to Russia.
For crying out loud.
Another small but meaningful change, Book Jolene is about to accept a job at a law firm that she knows is based on tokenism. TV Jolene seems to be already at that job but has plans to get out as soon as she passes the bar.
That's good for her.
And TV Jolene has a boyfriend now.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's her married white boss and he bought her that car.
Yeah, see, that's frustrating.
I know! It's another small change that undermines an important character, and as soon as you start thinking about why it was made, you realize it doesn't need to be there at all, which actually makes it more frustrating.
I think we were about to talk about Russia.
Sure, yeah, let's talk about Russia.
Though essentially the same events in the book and the series, the small differences between them underline their disparate theses. Walter Tevis told the New York Times his novel is a tribute to brainy women, and like many of his other protagonists, Beth is an outsider and a fierce competitor. In Russia, she realizes that the one thing she knows she loves is winning, which, like sobriety, is something that in chess she must do on her own. It's nice that Benny and his friends call to strategize, but ultimately, she's the one to sit calmly across the board from Borgov, close her eyes, and think for a full hour in order to finally beat him.
Which is not very cinematic, so Netflix gives Beth someone to share her feelings with.
Wait. How did he get there so easily? Beth spent all those plot points trying to make enough money to... Oh, there it is. Yep.
According to Towns, the Russians helped bring him there in case he was a useful distraction. Apparently, the KGB knew Beth has the hots for Towns. But not that she's not exactly his type.
What I really wanted was for us to be friends. And you kind of broke my heart.
I have a way of doing that.
In the end, Scott Frank's idea of Beth veers from Tevis's, but it does stay true to the version of Beth on screen. In both mediums, Beth goes for a walk and finds a chess game. In the book, she slips out of the embassy celebration after her win, walks back to the hotel, mentally planning for the next world championship 2 years away. She comes upon a man in the park. He doesn't recognize her, but that doesn't matter. He's a fellow chess player, and she asks him to play.
On the show, she's on her way to the airport and hops out to escape her boring chaperone. She's greeted as a celebrity by a crowd of Russians, thrilled to see her. An ending that makes sense for TV Beth and her journey that was tweaked throughout. While Book Beth's struggle is to find peace within herself, to stop numbing herself against the fear of being alone, TV Beth seems more in search of outer acceptance and an assurance that she's not crazy and that she belongs. A throng of admirers is her perfect endgame. For What's the Difference, I'm Francesca Rivera.
And I'm Clint Gage, reminding you to stay safe, wear a mask, get vaccinated as soon as you can, and be sure to subscribe to IGN Movies and TV for more What's the Difference.